Hey guys, my name is Nicolette Mashile, also known as the Financial Bunny. Welcome to the Financial Bunny TV. Today we're talking all things buying off plan. Now remember that none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. I have literally, just before I started recording this video, dealt with a scam. Somebody is going around selling PDFs on how to register for easy equities, saying that they are me. So they are selling it as me, and they are selling these PDFs to people. Guys, first and foremost, I will never sell you a PDF. I mean, what? A whole PDF. Secondly, those PDFs that you are buying, the one that this gentleman bought is how to register an account on easy equities. That is something you do not need to go out and buy. It is made available for you on the Easy Equities site for free. And if you don't like their site and you want to hear a video, I've done the video on how to register an Easy Equities account. And let me tell you, anyone who has an Easy Equities account will be more than happy to be able to give you this information. So please do not get scammed. However, it is not about that we're talking about today. As I said, we're speaking about buying off plan. And this video is brought to you by Lion Pride Lifestyle Estate. So let's get straight into it. Buying a house has the beauty about buying a house is that it's literally a process that should be fun, that you should be going through. Yes, it's daunting, but at the same time, it's very exciting. For some people, you'll go around looking at existing houses, and then for some people, you may be looking for a new smell. You know that doll smell? When you buy new things, I'm hoping your house is not going to smell like a doll. But generally, when you buy new things, they smell like a doll. That's the type of house that some people are looking for. In other instances, people also buy off plan because they are investors in the property market and the developer invites them to these sessions where they can buy off plan even before even one house goes up. So those are some of the options that you've got when you are looking to purchase or build a house. You would buy a plan, and sometimes you get the opportunity that the developer has already got show houses, and you would go there, and instead of viewing the house that you're actually going to be moving in, you would view a show house that is modeled around the plan that you then would be buying. But we have heard of some horrific stories that come from people who have bought either from a developer or buying off plan. Some of those stories include the fact that the house at the end, when you get it, does not live up to the hype that marketing created. You know, they talk about this lifestyle estate that is going to have all the finishings, all the features, all the amenities that you need. And then by the time you move in, all of those things are not there. That's another thing that happens quite a lot to a lot of people, that their house gets built, and then they end up living on a building site because other people's homes still need to be built. And now all of a sudden you're finding yourself in a space where you are living, builders, and we know sometimes when there are builders, issues do arise, whether it's from the place just not looking habitable, or sometimes you may find that these are the same people that could potentially be scamming with outside people to have house break-ins. That's actually happened to us. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not making any I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but what happened when I moved into my estate, one of the things that happened was that every time we had builders on site, there would be a break-in. Literally, it follows the next week after these guys have gone off the site. And it happens. It's not always going to happen, but it does happen. Which is why it's very important that a developer like Central Development and Cosmopolitan Projects, from their experience of being in the market, they have learned that you need to build these phases and finish the phases before you move into another one. So when they're selling to their clients and they're selling these stands, they would sell their stands all in one phase. So instead of you buying someone another phase and then they build your house, but then they still need to build everybody, they're finishing off a phase and everybody can move in at the same time. Now, the other thing that people always worry about is cheap material being used, or NRBC standards not being followed. People also complain about the fact that the house doesn't look like the house that they actually bought. And in actual fact, this video came about because I received an email from a young lady who has bought a house, and she bought a house. She went to the show house. She saw the plans. She bought the house. And then all of us, she bought a stand, obviously. And then when the bond got approved and everything got approved, and she now needs to sign off on these plans, the plans now look a little bit different from the show house or the plans that she had assumed she was going to get. So what does that actually mean? Well, I went and asked the guys from Central Development and Cosmopolitan Project, and this is the answer that they gave me.
So thank you. We actually get this question quite a lot, and I understand where the lady's coming from, because obviously if I'm seeing a product and you're telling me I can buy this product, I want you to give me exactly what's in front of me. But there's a lot of factors that we need to take into consideration when buying in a new development, especially if it's has to do with stands as opposed to apartments. So what we do is we take stands that are nearest to our offices and we build the different types of plans that we have. It's purely just to show the product, really, to be able to say this is what a 70 square meter will look like, these are the finishes that will be there, and this is the design, so that you have an idea of when you get your 70, this is what it should look like. The other thing to take into consideration is the stands. Not all stands on a development are going to be exactly the same. There's a lot of things to that factor when we do placements of a plan on a stand, such as building lines, electric sewer lines, are there electric boxes on the stands, fire hydrants, and so forth. And this will dictate how the plan sits on the stand. It's unlike an apartment block that you see and you're like, this is what you're going to get. And when you buy it and when they build it, it's just a block of flats going up and it's copy and paste. We can't always do a copy and paste because we're dictated to by regulations on the stand. So some stands are wide, some have more length. So a house can either sit vertically or horizontally. You have corner stands where you can have a house where the garage is either on the side or in front because it's not the same size. And it's impossible that all stands can be a corner stand as much as clients love corner stands. So each stand is different, although your plan is the same. So the placement is not always going to look exactly copy and paste like the show house. And that's why you would get something different at times. So what we do is when we sign plans, we show you the placement from the beginning, at submission, at approval with the bank, and at lawyer signing, so that you obviously understand once your house is built, this is exactly what it's going to look like. This is where you're going to enter, and this is the side your bedrooms are going to be. So it's not a surprise once the house is built. I have two friends that live in an estate in Midrand. I can't really recall the name right now, and their houses are exactly the same, except one person has a yard in the back and the other has more yard space in the front. So it's literally just what the stand allows. And it's important for clients to always ask questions. If you see your plan, make sure you ask questions. Make sure you understand everything that you're looking at. Thank you.
And I think I fully understand where the buyer is coming from, but also where the developer is coming from. And I can understand that as a buyer, you are expecting to get what you saw and what you bought. And as a developer, you want to give the buyer exactly what they bought, but at the same time, you've got to do it within reasonable means. And I think it's a good example that the lady speaks about in the voice note, because one of the biggest things is the fact that when we all go and see these houses, we will see the corner stands because they look bigger, or we will see a stand with a show house that we really like. The reality is that you might not find an identical stand to the one where the show house has actually been built, which then means that they need to maneuver around the stand that you've got and still give you a similar plan to the one you've picked, but also keeping in mind the restrictions of the stand that you have bought. And I think that is a fair conversation. It is a difficult one for a lot of us who are not in the building space or building industry to understand, but I think it actually does make sense. Of course, the issue comes when they've built something that you, first and foremost, you bought a 60 square meter house and they built you a 40 square meter house, then you've got a problem, because then something does not make sense. So I think it's also important to look at what are those little changes or alterations that have happened, and what could you potentially do about it. If it's prejudicing you and all of a sudden you're buying something of less value than what you've paid for, then definitely it's something to take up. But I think it is also important that as the buyer, you have the conversation with the developer to find out why all of a sudden, the plan does not look, and especially if there's specific things that you liked in the show house. I think that's also important. So for instance, if there was a specific hook or corner that you liked in that specific house, it is important for you to then make sure that the developer understands, so that even when you buy a stand with the developer can see that this is corner or this hook is not going to happen the way you want it to happen. Let's rather than make sure that we buy you a stand where these things can actually happen. Another thing I always notice is that people will buy a certain house because the sun comes in from a certain direction when they are at the show house. But the reality is that, remember that the stand that you buy is going to affect how the sun will also come in your house, and at what time of the day the sun comes in, because you're not going to get a copy and paste of the stand where the show house is, unless you are buying one that looks exactly like that. So it is important for you to remember these things. But I'm going to give you 4 tips that you've got to consider before buying off plan. One is make sure that you're working with an NHBRC registered builder or developer, because that then means that if there's something that goes wrong, you do have legal recourse. If this person is not registered, the NHBRC can't help you. They can't help you. And these are the watchdogs that make sure that developers and builders are making sure that they build according to legal criteria, and they build to the standards, technical standards, okay? And construction standards. Those things are very, very important, okay? So it is important to make sure that the person that you're building with is registered with the NHBRC. Secondly, I think another tip that is really, really important is to remember that you do quality inspections while the building is happening. Now, of course, you are not a qualified person to be able to become a building inspector all of a sudden, right? But I think it is important to make sure that structurally you get somebody that understands structure, somebody that understands the technicals, somebody that understands lighting, that can go with you regularly to your site to be able to see what is it that they're actually building. Of course, this might irritate some of the developers, but I think it's a fair expectation that a developer should have from their buyer, especially a buyer that is interested in how their house is going to look after the actual building. Yes, you go for a developer that you trust, and you trust that they're going to do a good job, but at the same time, it is important to ensure that while all of this is happening, you are also part of the process to make sure that you are inspecting your house throughout the process. And the reason why I also bring this one up is because I always hear people complain that by the time they move in, they already have municipal bills to pay. Things like water, things like electricity. Remember that as the building is happening, all those things are also being put in. Your electricity is being put in, your water is being put in. And some developers, you may find that their contractors use your water that is now under your name, or use electricity that is now under your name, or or things like that, or leave refuse that is now under your name. And the municipality is going to bill you on those things because they are now under your name. You are the account holder. So you do need to make sure that you are also keeping track of these things and inspecting and finding out, okay, the account is now in my name. I see you guys are using my water. What does this mean? When can we sign something that says up until this date, before I take occupation, you guys will take care of this bill? So those kind of things are really, really important. And I think one of probably the most important things that even people who are leasing should do, because the law actually requires you to do this, is to do a pre-occupation inspection. A lot of people don't do this. Even when they are moving into a rental apartment, there's what we call a snag list that you are supposed to create with the real estate agent or the owner to mark down all the things that are broken in the house, so that when you are actually moving out, you can come back and say, I'm not going to replace this because it was already broken when I moved in and you guys did not replace it during my stay. It is also important that you do the same thing when it comes to your house, because if you are getting a developer developing your house, you need to make sure. In fact, just reminded me last week's draw, when we were doing the draw for Lion Pride Estate. One of the young ladies was inspecting her house and she said, no. There was supposed to be something here. I don't see that thing. And this is pre her actually occupying that house. So she went back to her salesperson and said, listen, when I bought the house, there was something here that I actually fell in love with, a feature that I liked. Why is it not part of this? And luckily for her, it's something that they could then do post, post building, but before she actually occupies it. I think those are some of the things that you've got to keep in the back of your mind, because at the end of the day, it is your house, and buying off plan should not become a nightmare. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next one.